Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to viewers' questions about political philosophy, about culture, about history, about all those aspects of human affairs that matter in trying to live in a good society.
Here's a good one from Ben who says he can't have a driver's license for medical reasons, and he's wondering what your thoughts are about driver's licenses because in some cases, which are not unreasonable, people are denied a driver's license. Does that infringe our right to travel as stated in the Charter of Rights?
The short answer is no, and the long answer is not really. Because the thing about driver's licenses is that they constitute permission to enter a particular kind of facility that is maintained by the government in order to operate a particular kind of machinery while in that facility. It may seem like an odd way of putting it because roads are everywhere, they're ubiquitous, and they are essential to our way of life. But you don't need a driver's license to drive a car. If you are on your own property, not on a public road, you are at liberty to do as you please, subject to the normal kind of requirements of the law, not to be grossly negligent and that sort of thing. It's when you're planning to take a motor vehicle on a government road that you actually require this kind of permission. That's why the analogy people sometimes draw, well, you need a license to drive a car, why shouldn't you need a license to own a gun? I could see licensing you using a gun on government property, but they're really not comparable situations. And it isn't really changed by the fact that the automobile is so woven into our way of life. I mean, there didn't used to be horse licenses, but motor vehicles do move rather fast and they can do a lot of damage. Also, the problem, of course, is that there aren't private as well as government roads in anything like the same sense. There isn't a private road network that can get you from coast to coast. That's why governments have to run the roads, is because you can't have competing private road networks. You can't have highways bumping into each other. So the state is inevitably involved. If you could somehow have competing road networks, if gravity weren't an issue, then it would be up to the private operators of the different roads to determine the conditions. So the thing is, I grant that it is a major inconvenience to be denied a driver's license. And I can see why, when governments have to run the roads, and they are really the only way of moving yourself around the country, it might feel as though it's not a matter of choice, and it's not just one way of doing things, and so there ought to be a equal before the law public accommodation. But what you have to remember, and this is not a judgment on what may happen in any given situation. I'm not saying the government can't get it wrong, but cars are dangerous. And the standard of driving, most people drive a lot worse than they think they drive.
Except for me.
Yeah, well,
I'm
me, obviously.
perfect,
I know how brilliant I am. But you get out on the road and you watch people, and it is just amazing the stuff that they do, how oblivious they are. People are driving 20 kilometers under the speed limit. People are driving
This drives me nuts.
15 kilometers over the speed limit in rain and sleet, just as they would be if it were a clear, sunny day. Changing lanes without looking, having no idea there's somebody behind them. This incredible stuff that people do. It's bad enough without having people on the road. I think too many people get licenses. I think the required skill level isn't high enough, and I think they are not strict enough about policing people who are no longer able to drive, whose reaction times, whose alertness are not what they were 20 or 30 years ago. Of course, the government doesn't want to deny people licenses because they vote. And especially, let's be blunt here, older people are much more likely to vote. They're also more likely not to be as good at driving as they once were. But given how essential it is, and given the sensitivity, governments are very reluctant to tell people they can't drive. But the idea that you have a right rather than a privilege of operating a motor vehicle, as I say, I see where you could say, well, it's not really a privilege because the roads are everywhere. The government puts the roads everywhere, and then the government tells you, unlike other people, can't go on them. But it is a privilege. It is not necessary to live, and it is one that requires you to be able to operate a motor vehicle reliably all the time, not just most of the time, because the consequences of a mistake are so serious.
Exactly. And that's other people, right? Even the libertarian position that I should have the right to do what I want provided I don't hurt someone. Well, if I know I have a medical issue that can make me, for instance, seizures, that can make me lose control of my vehicle, I might hurt somebody or damage other people's property, I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, you might say it is my private judgment whether if I am target shooting on my own property, I should be wearing my glasses or not. But the government tells me if I am found operating a motor vehicle without my glasses, I'm in a heap of trouble, and rightly so. I can't see well enough to drive. And thus, Although I appreciate the burden that is imposed on people by being told they can't drive, and I do understand the possibility of injustice, it's not a violation of your human rights to be told you may not enter this facility and operate this machinery because we have determined that you're just not up to it. And as I said, I wish the government, in fact, would tell more people that.
All right, then. Thanks for that, folks. If you want to play along and ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thanks, and see you next time.